Okay, everybody ready? I would like to welcome all members and guests to the December 5th, 2023 Public Hearing Committee meeting. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. So if you could take a moment and just ensure that your phones are on silent, that would be greatly appreciated. If you are attending virtually on the line, please mute yourself when not speaking and unmute yourself when you're called upon to speak. And remember to use your Microsoft Teams raise hand feature and turn your camera on and remove it after you have finished speaking. And with that, I call the December 5th Public Hearing Committee meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councilmember, Michelle, seconded by Councilmember Barry. All in favor? That is carried. I now officially open the public meeting held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and Norfolk County policy. Please be advised that to preserve your right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, you are required to make a comment or provide a written submission prior to the passing of a bylaw. These meetings are to allow the public to provide initial comments on presented planning matters. First up on the agenda, we have item 4.1, which is the Lynn River Heights Phase 2 development application, CD 23067. And with that, I will pass it over to Mr. Sloan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. So now that the county's invested in infrastructure, our water infrastructure in Port Dover, we've got a development application that's moving ahead, and we have Mohammed is here to provide an overview. Mohammed.
Thank you, Brendan. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and the Council. This application was originally submitted for a total of 500 residential dwelling units in 2017. The subject lands are located at the northwest edge of Port Dover urban area with a total of 39.8 hectares of lands. Next slide, please. It's a vacant land surrounded by a residential subdivision known as Lynn River Heights Phase 1 to the east, Highway 6 to the south, agricultural and few residential lands to the west, and natural heritage features such as PSW and hazard lands and Lynn River Trail to the north. Next slide, please. Just to give a general history of the development proposal of this land, initially the site was approved with a subdivision for 484 single detached residential dwelling in 2006. In 2017, a revised proposal was submitted for 500 units for a mix of singles and semis. In 2019, due to the interim control bylaw initiated by the county, the application was stalled. And in 2023, a new proposal was submitted to restart the review process. Since there are some fundamental changes to the original proposal, staff suggested that this should be presented to another public hearing meeting to allow the council and the member of the public to provide additional comments. And that is why we are presenting this application to them. Next slide, please. So currently the subject lands are designated as urban residential and zoned as residential type 1A and residential type 2 for single detached and semi-detached dwellings. And we have a holding provision to allow a development agreement on this land. Next slide, please. The revised development proposal includes a mix of various types of housing units with a total of 449 lots. This includes 3 types of singles, 15 feet, 12 feet, and 10 feet lot frontages. There are also semi-detached lots with 9 feet lot frontage. A future block of mixed-use development, potentially with apartments and commercial uses along Highway 6, which will be developed at a later stage. And this configuration was aligned with the draft, with our draft Port Dover secondary policies for future development size. The development includes a parkland of 0.7 hectare and a stormwater management pond of 1.36 hectare to the southeast of the site. There will be a 6-meter buffer from the hazard lands and significant woodlands at the north side. There will be walkway connection to the natural heritage features to the north. There will be a principal access from Highway 6 and 2 internal connections from Phase 1 subdivision to the east. And there will be also a future connection block to the west. Next slide, please. The zoning amendment application will change the current zoning of residential type 1A and residential type 2 zone to residential type 1B, residential type 2. And this will facilitate smaller lot frontages from a range of 15 feet and 10 feet lot frontages. A future mixed-use block will be neighborhood commercial zone, and the stormwater and management pond with the parkland will be open space zone. The zoning relief for the residential zones includes smaller lot frontage, smaller lot size, smaller lot front yard, side yards, minimum landscape area. And for the mixed-use block, the zoning relief will be setbacks, lot coverage, and building height. There are two types of draft zoning bylaw. There are two errors in the draft zoning bylaw in attachment B. In section 1 of the bylaw, instead of part 0, it should read as part 1 to part 4. And in section 5, instead of part 3, it should be read as part 4. And thanks, Councillor Van Person, to find this error. Next slide, please. Through Madam Chair, in support of the application, we received a number of technical reports, which are basically prepared between 2006 and 2018. And this includes a planning justification report, stormwater management report, traffic study, functional servicing report, environmental inventory assessment, environmental site assessment, phase 1, geotechnical investigation report, water modeling report, and archaeological assessment report. A preliminary engineering review has been completed, which is basically require an updated report for functional servicing report, stormwater management report, and traffic impact study. Staff will further review these documents once received. One public comments has been received and included with this report, and the concern is related to drainage and existing ongoing inundation to the neighbor's backyard at the residential lots, basically at the southwest corner of the site. The comment included that the existing retaining wall of phase 1 subdivision may cause this inundation, and it can be further worsened due to the proposed location of the stormwater management pond for phase 2. Next slide, please. The preliminary considerations for this development will include housing density, appropriate size and setbacks, connectivity of the parks and trails, enough street parking, an updated traffic study that will provide the updated informations, and if there is any upgrade required, and viability of potential roundabout at the main axis of the development, and servicing and infrastructure requirements. Next slide, please. So the next step would be reviewing any updated reports and drawings and identification of any improvement of the plan of subdivision and providing a recommendation report. Staff recommends this application be received for information and any public comments be considered for future recommendation report. That's all from the staff, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Mohammed. We have one registered speaker. The consultant is here. So would you like to ask questions of staff, or would you like to hear that presentation and then be able to go for both? Okay. Deborah Walker, come on up. There is a button on the right-hand side of the microphone you can hit. You have about 5 minutes, or you don't have about 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes, and I can let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
I hope not to be that long at all. I just wanted to say a few things. I'm Deb Walker. I'm with MHPC Planning, and I'm here, a planning agent that's working on behalf of the owners. We have been through quite a bit of discussion with staff to date, and so a lot of what you have seen today that's before you have, we've been working a lot with Mohammed Planning Engineering as well. And we've addressed hopefully a lot of their comments. We are in the midst of working on an updated traffic study, as had requested by staff, and as well as a functional servicing report. So we hope to have those submitted in the early, hopefully January, February of 2024. So we are working away on that. There has been, I just wanted to maybe go through a couple of slides and just point out a few little things. I won't try to duplicate anything that's already been mentioned by Mohammed in his presentation. So I'll skip over site context as we've gone through that, and clearly you know. And just want to point out that for those that don't know, maybe it wasn't clear, but the zoning on the property is currently permits, the majority of it permits already 15-meter lots. So that is for the area and the sort of top part that's in the black polygon, I guess, is already zoned to permit 15-meter lot subdivision. And then in the southerly part is the R2 zoning, which is permits essentially semi-detached lots. So next slide, please. So you can see really the bulk of the changes that we're requesting. So we are not changing the areas that are identified in yellow and in green, essentially on the plan on the screen. So which is pretty much all of the perimeter lots. So everything that is along the edges will not change. So those lots that are adjacent to the phase one, the existing phase one Lynn River subdivision will not change in terms of the zoning that's proposed. And the green areas, so the areas that I know had been worked out with the Conservation Authority, so we are not proposing to change any of that. It's really more the central areas that we are looking to provide for a larger range of housing formats. So we're introducing some additional, so 12-meter lots, which are roughly around 25 feet, and as well, or sorry, about 36 feet, and as well as some additional, so that's in the brown that you can see on the screen. And then the purple are 10-meter lots. So we have a number of 10-meter lots that we're proposing as well. And as well as in the pink, so we've shifted essentially the semi-detached housing format up into really the central sort of area of the lot of the property, which is that sort of light pink color. And then we've got the stormwater management block that is in the blue to the southeast corner, and as well as a public park that is next to it in the green that you can see, the light green that is on the screen. So we had originally had a park along Highway 6, and through some of the staff comments that are historically had been provided, we have moved that park into a more, I think, a better location instead of along the highway. And we've left the 2 future development blocks then that will come at a future stage. Right now, at this point, we're focused on trying to get the back part underway, and then perhaps bring forward more of a mixed use type development that allows for some commercial retail uses with a mix of residential at about a medium density. So that is in alignment with the planning departments. They've been working on the draft secondary plans. So we've been working with staff to try to bring some of the aspects that have been considered and determined through that process. Next slide. So we have received a few comments. A lot of these have already been addressed in the submission. So there was originally requests for some of the Street B to provide for it to be designed as a green vista street. So that has been accommodated in the latest submission. And as well, there had been a comment about the 10-meter singles may not allow for as much on-street parking. So in the draft plan of subdivision that you see before you, we have actually removed a number of the 10-meter lots that we had. We had them on the west side of Street B. If you want to go back to the draft plan, I can show you where that is.
You're at 5 minutes.
Okay.
Deborah.
So you can see on the west side of the main road, we have changed those lots from, they were previously the purple. So they were originally the 10-meter. We've changed them back to 12-meter to address that comment. And as well, Actually, I'll just skip ahead to some of the other comments. I can't. Yep,
If you could, yeah,
moving
if you could just
forward.
summarize quickly, and then we can have councils ask you questions and you'd be able to
Okay.
elaborate on anything.
Yeah, so essentially, and then just the mixed use future development block was also another aspect that we had addressed that had been received through staff comments. So essentially, that's just an overview of some of the background that has been going on in, what has led to the application before you today.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Okay.
Questions from members of council? Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Through you to the deputation. The park, is it an active park or is it passive parkland? What is it going to be?
So we haven't gone into any kind of detail on other than it would be transferred to the municipality as part of parkland. We haven't got into any detail about, what that would look like or what maybe the municipality's need is at this time. If so it could be either at this stage. Yeah. Yep.
Councillor Van Passen.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have some concerns about the parking, the on-street parking.
Okay.
If you take the very small lots, put a driveway on it, you can't park within a couple of meters of the driveway. It doesn't leave much space. But could you look at sort of doubling the driveways on two adjoining lots to leave more open street space rather than putting consistently one to the middle or one to each side? Is that a possibility to get a bit more on-street parking available? And, while I'm on the subject, maybe next to the proposed park, leave a few extra spaces, like maybe eliminate one of the lots there and leave some parking spaces by the park that could be sort of collectively used by the community. Is there any option for those kind of ideas?
So through the mayor. So I just, you and I think a lot alike because we've actually been working at integrated into the zoning bylaw before you. We actually did just that. We have put in actually a provision in the 12 meter, the 10 meter lots. We've put a provision in that requires a maximum driveway width of 3 meters at the road. So it may increase to allow for more parking on site, but at where it is on the street line next to the road would be a maximum of 3 meters. And then there would be a minimum landscape strip along like the landscape area on the street frontage. And the purpose of that is exactly to do what you're suggesting, is to bring the driveways so that they're not these huge driveway widths that would prevent parking, but it would actually it pushes the driveway to the one end by having those provisions established into the zoning bylaw. So we've actually built that right into the zoning. And I've been working with Mohammed on that to try to, because he did raise that would be a concern of council. So we actually worked on provisions and built that right into the zoning. And also we did remove the 10 meter lots to 12 meter to provide for additional parking as well along the street.
Now, if I can follow up with that, one of the requests is minimum front yard of 3 meters.
Mm-hmm.
That's not big enough to park a car. So how do we sort of?
Yes. So
yeah, it's 3 meters. And then where the garage is, there's a bit more. And
Correct.
then the side yards, exterior side yards on the corners are also 3 meters. Doesn't that cause a problem with sight triangles at intersections when you've only got 10 feet without a building on it?
So through you, Mayor, we have actually so the 3 meters is just to the dwelling face. And then the 6 meters is to the garage space. And the reason for that is to allow for the dwelling to be brought up closer to the street line to provide a little bit more of a more pedestrian friendly kind of streetscape, but it still allows for it requires the garage face to be set back further than the dwelling. So you would have a space for the car, and that minimum has to be 6 meters. So the garage has to be set back from the face of the dwelling. So that does provide for a parking space, at least one parking space within the lot, as well as any the lots would, or the dwellings would also provide for a parking garage like as well. And then in terms of the sight lines, so there is a provision in the zoning bylaw that does require that the sight line of 9 meters be maintained. So that there was some confusion on the daylight triangle versus sight line. So that was removed in the bylaw, which is in the package as well. So I know there was a comment in the technical comments further in the package that deals with that. So we have actually addressed it in the zoning bylaw that's before you.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can you address the subject of sidewalks?
Okay. There will be some. So the road allowances do provide for, we have in the draft plan, the road allowance that's provided for will be sufficient to allow for sidewalks.
And that would be on one side of the street, or?
I think on the Street B, it would be provided on both sides, and in the more local streets, it would be on the one side.
Thank you. Okay. And what date are you shooting at to start putting streets in and that type of thing?
Oh, gee. Well, we're not quite. So at this point, public meeting, we anticipate having the updated traffic report and functional servicing report in, as I mentioned, hopefully January, February type thing. And then usually then a staff report would come forward, hopefully recommending approval. And at that point, we would be, then there would appeal period. So we're looking at, probably this next year, we would be just literally working on approvals, getting agreements done, clearing conditions. So it probably wouldn't be until the following year.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Brenton, then Barry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of questions here. I'm trying to, so I guess it's street H and B I'm looking at. I assume they're 20-meter road allowances. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How deep are those lots on street, like the purple and I call it yellow, not yellow, you call it pink, I think.
Yeah.
How deep are they?
They're about 100 feet, 30 meters.
Okay, okay, so I'm just trying to figure the math out here. If you got a 20-meter road allowance,
Mhm.
and I'm getting that, the parking issue on the front here, like 30 meters, you have a bit of a boulevard, then a sidewalk, 1.5 meters. And then how far to the front of the house? Or building, whatever.
So the proposed zoning would have 3 meters to the front of the house, but 6 meters to the garage.
Okay, it just looks a little dense in terms of, I don't know, how do I describe it? Very compact in there for all those, I guess, in my opinion. But what do you build on something that with a 12-meter? How big of a house? Like, what's the side yards or condo or whatever it's going to be? How big of a side yards would they have?
So we haven't come forward with any kind of building plans at this point. But we could maybe, we could maybe look at providing like a typical type, like more of a building plan for maybe for the next time or, for our next resubmission.
And in you say there's 30 meters in depth. Is that for both, like Street B, I call it the purple and the pink, as you call it, am I right?
Yes.
So they're both 30 meters in depth?
Yes.
And the garages are set back further. So what would that leave them for a backyard?
I think the 6.5 meter is the setback for the rear lot line. So there would be at least a minimum depth of 6.5 meters that would be necessary for the backyard.
I guess you'd have to see it on a drawing, but so all these backyards are going to drain somewhere, I assume, for both those two things. And my last question, I guess, is the stormwater pond. I see it's at the front. Where's that drain to?
Well, the stormwater pond would, all of the catchment for the entire subdivision would be, unless there was any kind of a drainage already established, go to phase one, but the majority of it would be going to that block in the, where it's outlined in blue.
Yeah, I understand how that would get to the block, but where does the block stormwater pond outlet? I know there's provisions at the back for, I think there's some kind of a bit of a creek or something back there. I just wondered, like the pond being at the front, it must outlet to the street someplace.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's a good question. I can find that out for you. I don't have that information with me.
I'll go on to Councillor Berry, but Councillor Breton, there is some public correspondence included in our agenda that might help answer some of that, where the water's pooling. Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to the deputation. So you mentioned in HCC here on Street D that there's a neighborhood commercial. Do you have any sense of what that commercial development will be?
No.
I'm not asking you to tell me who's coming. I'm more wondering, like, is it built to suit a specific type of development, or is it just?
There's no, we have not created any kind of master plan or site plan for that development at this time.
Thank you.
So Duffy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you to the deputation. Thanks for being here today. Who do you envision is moving in here? What kind of community are we building?
I'm looking at the applicants. I think young families. That's why there is a range. The idea is that there would be a broader range of types of people or communities, like families or single people that would maybe move into it. To be honest, I'm not really part of the marketing part of it. I'm just I'm looking at the planning part and implementing it, but I can find that out for you.
Thanks. I guess the reason I asked the question, I'm looking at this and thinking that's a lot of homes, and if we're talking about families and young families, that typically in our community means a lot of cars, and I'm very much concerned about cars parking all over the roads and kids playing, and we have a subdivision here in Simcoe where it looks to me it's built very, very similarly, and it's a really challenging place to drive through because there are cars parked on either sides of roads, and it's really, really difficult. I wonder if you had any comment about mitigation strategies related to that, other than what you've already touched on from with driveways and street parking, because I am concerned that that's going to be a bigger problem than perhaps we planned for.
So the zoning does permit, so it does require the minimum two parking spaces that have to be provided on the property, right? So that is a pretty typical minimum parking standard for a single family dwelling, and that would be maintained as part of this development proposal. And then, like I said, in addition to that, then we've also provided for the zoning provisions to try to kind of clump the driveways so that they're together and allowing for a larger space on the frontage of the property to allow for additional parking. But we'll take that into consideration and maybe try to get some more thought if that is a concern.
I would appreciate that, in that, I think it's not uncommon for a family to have 3-4 vehicles at this stage. And, we live in a rural community, and yes, we have transit service, but it's not overly robust. So I think we certainly do need to consider that. And as families age and, significant others become involved, we end up with more cars on our streets. So it's something to consider. Thanks for your comments.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I guess for maybe council's information, I looked at this and thought, wow, that's dense. But as per our plans and secondary plan and so on, that was an encouragement of staff. So it meets kind of our development specs. So it's not to say that the, you know, the developer came and said, give me as much as I can. I think it's a unique situation with the housing crisis and so on, but I really agree with the parking because it's a safety issue, it's an inconvenience, but I have a few questions. Do you have any comment, or first of all, did you read the piece of public correspondence that was submitted with regards to pooling of water? And if so, do you have any comments on that? That is the parcel that the stormwater pond is going to back up onto.
Just simply that we will certainly bring it to the attention of the engineering firm that's going to be working on the functional servicing report update. But essentially, the way it works is any drainage from this property has to look after its drainage. So we cannot be putting drainage onto someone else's property that isn't experiencing that currently. And so we'll have to look at that and make sure that there's not any added issue to that. At the same time, you know, I don't know what the specifics or that specific issue is that's existing. My understanding is it's been maybe a historical problem based on some of the staff comments.
I think it's, yeah, and I think it's from the earlier development, which is not a you problem, but I think as our community grows, we have these 4 residential lots there, among others, that are going to be seriously impacted. And so I know that it is not the intent of any development to come in and offset water elsewhere, anywhere, any way, shape, or form, but it does happen. And so I guess maybe it's a comment for our staff that I would really encourage staff to look into that and pay special attention with regards to stormwater retention and the existing problem that's now documented on the public record, and see if there's anything we can do to assist. Another question I have is concerning the commercial. So Councillor Barry's touched on it. So that would be the last thing that would happen. Would that be the last thing that would happen?
That is the intention, yeah.
Okay, and that includes medium density, you said. What does that mean to you?
So that is at a higher density. I don't have the actual, it was the secondary plan actually sets out what density was envisioned for that area.
I think it's 5.
I have to borrow Mohammed on that because I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, it would be in keeping with that secondary plan density, presumably.
Okay. So council is aware, I believe that's 5 stories.
Yes, I think the zoning that we had would permit, I think it was 5 or 6 stories.
Okay, and building on the commercial. So I know you haven't advanced those plans yet, but I just want to throw out my own 2 cents there. So it makes sense that a gateway of a community would have the commercial. I know that staff understand it. It's from a planning policy perspective, but you can't ignore those residential lots that are there and that were already there. So I guess my comment to staff is I would encourage staff again to use site plan control to ensure that there's buffering for those neighboring residential units if there's lights and parking and so on. And council can jump in here if they are on the same page with me and ignore me if they're not. But it is my hope and vision in our communities, in most of our communities across Norfolk, and it doesn't always play out this way, that we build commercial entities small enough that mom and pops are attracted to use that space, not big box. They serve a purpose. There's still ownership for them from local community members, but that's not my vision for this gateway into this particular community. So I know that smaller footprints in commercial spaces will then exclude a large big box store from coming in and renting that particular space. So I would urge our development community to just keep the type of commercial that we already have in a lot of our small towns in mind as we're building here. We're going to need more commercial space as we continue to grow. It's not the use that's the issue. I think it's how we build it and the size of the structure and who we then attract to those. So I do have a couple more comments and questions, but is there any council member that wants to jump on the commercial bandwagon? Councillor Van Passen?
Thank you, Member. Well, I just pulled up the proposed zoning bylaw. It says minimum building height is 3 stories, maximum building height would be 6. So I'm not sure if that's mom and pop stuff, but I do want to follow up a bit on the drainage problem that you brought up. If my memory serves correctly, that this was phase 2 of a larger development. The problem with the drainage at the One Neighbors was created by phase 1. And now we have a different company that's taking over phase 2. Does that different company take over the problem created under phase 1? Like legally, I know it should ethically, that you should try to resolve that by, like, maybe the retaining wall they put in to keep the water on their property should be taken out so it can go to their pond. But, you know, is there any legal obligation as the new owner of phase 2 to deal with an existing problem created by phase 1?
That is getting beyond my expertise. I am not a lawyer.
Maybe
But
just
we'll
tell your drainage engineer to deal with it.
But we'll look
fix
at
it.
it. We'll look at, like I said, we'll bring it to the attention and see if there's anything within reason that we can do, and certainly not exasperate the current situation.
Okay, my last comment / question, I guess at this early stage is probably more of a comment, but on this side of the road, there's commercial in town a little bit more. There isn't any active transportation. The other side of the road has a walking bike path on Highway 6. This side does not. The other side of the road does not have a sidewalk. The residential area comes out and meets the walking path that has buffers. So is something like that worked into the plan at all to create active transportation so that we're not encouraging everyone to jump in their cars and drive around?
So are you referring to the future development blocks in that area? Is that where you're thinking?
I'm referring to a development contribution in full along Highway 6 along the parcel. Quite often we talk about putting sidewalks or bike paths or whatever it is inside a development, and then the municipality ends up on the hook to then put active transportation or a sidewalk in after that development's fully built out with 500 additional units. I'm wondering if there's been any conversation to have the developer contribute to a sidewalk, a bike path, a walking path, whatever it may be, on Highway 6.
Within the municipal road allowance.
Abutting your development lands and connecting inwards. Has that been discussed?
It hasn't yet, but again, we can take that back.
Yeah, I think I think it's important, and there's another, development in Port Dover that recently the municipality just put the sidewalk in for, and technically I think that should be a development contribution when we're growing, and shouldn't be a taxpayer contribution after it's said and done a few years down the road. So if staff can take that away and you can carry on with that conversation, and I'm not a public safety expert or transportation expert, so I don't know if it's a sidewalk. I don't know if it's a bike path or a similar walking lane that's on the other side of the road, but something that encourages active transportation if there are 500 plus homes out there. It's not a lot of parking spots downtown Port Dover. Okay, are there any other questions, Councillor Duthie, then Van Passen? And staff can answer as well if you would like.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to ask if I could direct a question to staff. So to staff, I actually found in the technical comments, it was nice to see and appreciated that there were comments from the Grand Area District School Board. I found it quite a little concerning, but I appreciated the comments that they may be at capacity based on the size of this development, and they are requesting that there is notification in the agreement of purchase and sale that students may not be able to go to school there. I guess I'm curious, has there been any communication with the Brant Haldimand Norfolk Catholic District School Board, as St. Cecilia's would be very close to that development?
Through Madam Mayor to the councillor, no, we did not receive comments from them as of yet. But regarding the comment that provided, it is a very common comment from them, particularly in urban areas, just to make sure or confirm that in case there is any, overflow, then they have to
ship their students to another school. It's pretty standard comments from them. I don't know the actual scenario, what is the capacity right now, but it may happen, and that will also, from planning perspective, we'll also include that in our conditions. Then the owner that will come, they will be aware that that might happen. That's a pretty standard condition.
Perfect. Thanks for that. I would just suggest that St. Cecilia's is a relatively smaller school, I think, in that neighborhood. So if they're in the Catholic board, that may be a challenge as well. Thanks.
Someone else? And I forget, Councillor Van Passen.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm not sure if this question is for staff or the agent, but I read through that the future development block and that access to Highway 6 is planned for some time down the road. And I read some comments about having trouble with the MTO on the roundabout design, and that hasn't been a provincial highway in about 25 years. So I wonder why you're having such an issue with the MTO on it. But my question would be, would the developer either consider or would the county impose that new access be created up front so that during development of a 100-acre subdivision, not every truck has to drive through an existing subdivision to get there from here? Why not put in the new road first so that all the equipment and heavy equipment and trucks can access during the construction through the new part and not pound up the old roads and deal with all the people's homes and get complaints about that and all those kind of things? So is that possible that we put in that new road first?
For you, Madam Mayor, are we referring to the road that is on the white road that's going down to Highway 6 there through the two future development blocks? Yeah, so no, that the intention was that road would be developed at the same time as the subdivision. Yeah, in
I
behind.
think when I read through the report, it said that it be done at some point, and I said I wanted it in.
Yeah,
If that's
no,
the
of
first
course.
job we want to
Of
start
course,
on, is
yeah,
put
no,
the new access in.
absolutely, yeah.
Councillor Columbus.
A question for staff. Has the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing reviewed or commented on this application?
So, Madam Mayor, generally for the subdivision zoning applications, we don't send to Ministry of Municipal Affairs. It comes when an official amendment is required.
Okay, with that, is there anyone here in council chambers that wishes to speak to this report today? And is there anyone? Oh, come on up, sir. If you wouldn't mind, come on up to the podium, state your name for the public record.
My name is Peter Dove. I've lived in Port Dover for almost 2 years. Been moved from Ancaster. I love living in Port Dover with my family, my wife. The rest of the family's all grown up and moved on. So I think there would be a rebellion in phase 1 that's been built already if you try and run trucks in with the bill to build the phase 2 and beyond. It's a very easy area to block off, and we would likely block it. Well, the population's seniors, and seniors like the environment that we live in. It's peaceful, it's well maintained. There are a few cars parked on the road, but not that many. Not a problem, but it's going to be a problem. With 500 new properties going in the designated area, that most probably means there's going to be something like 1,500 residents overall. I've lived, as I said, in Port Dover for 2 years. Haven't been able to find a doctor, not one. And that's a problem. It's not just my problem. There are a lot of other people with medical, a need for a doctor, and the doctors just aren't taking people. And some of them aren't even taking you onto a list, on a waiting list. So this is a problem, especially if we've got young families coming in to the area. They're going to want doctors. Well, you're going to expect a mum to drive 20, 30 kilometers, maybe more, to find a doctor. So there are none in town. None. They're there, but none have space to take new residents on. Plenty of dentists. We're okay for dentists. But doctors is a challenge. So I'd like to put it on public record that that is something that maybe not the builders, it's not their fault, but maybe the council should be looking at how to attract more physicians into the area for the residents that are here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks for coming and speaking with us. I think Councillor Huffman has a comment or a question for you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin, through you. Just wanted to thank you very much for speaking to the concerns. And that is a concern. I'm the councillor for Waterford, and we're experiencing exponential growth. And it is often brought up about the fact that our healthcare system, we are lacking physicians who are able to take on new patients at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a task force per se that we are involved with in terms of looking at recruitment and trying to get more physicians here in the Haldeman, Norfolk area. So it's definitely not gone unnoticed. It is a high priority. Unfortunately, I agree with you very strongly in terms of people need to have proper health care. It's a social determinant of a good life.
Yeah.
And when you don't have it, it leads to many other issues. Unfortunately, when we don't have them, then that's where the issues rise. But the province doesn't take that as a reason for us to say no to a development. We have to make sure that we follow all the letters to the law and dot the I's and cross the T's. But I do take your comments to heart and appreciate them.
It was reported in the press, I think 3 weeks ago, that Norfolk was the poorest supported county in all of Ontario for medical services. That's something to be ashamed of. Everybody pays their taxes, we expect to have the services, and medical services are fundamental to living.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find a member of council here disagree with you, sir, but I will raise that, it is a provincially mandated envelope, and I know the public doesn't care because they do pay their taxes and it's one taxpayer, but it is a concern. So we are spending municipal tax dollars to try and recruit physicians here, but I hear you.
Can I get on the top of your list then?
On the top of the list, sure. And while we're at it, please don't close your road, and we take your comments seriously, but no rebellions allowed. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming in your comments. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yep, come on up. Just a reminder while he's joining at the podium that if you want to preserve your right to appeal, you have to provide comments either today or written before the passage of a bylaw. Whenever you're ready, just state your name for the public record, please.
My name's Raymond Wilkinson. I live at 659 Highway 6, which adjoins this new development. The first phase was put in almost 10 years ago. They put a 6-foot wall down the side of my property. No place to drain it. The drainage ditch is 200 feet behind me. I've talked to numerous people about the problem. Now a new construction company has taken over, a new engineering company has taken over, and 10 years later, I'm still unable to use 100 feet of the property down the side of my house. I have a 1-acre lot, and it's constantly flooded. I'm stuck when I cut the grass. It's time for something to be done. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your public correspondence. It was put in the agenda, and I agree with you. We shouldn't be causing issues for the surrounding neighbors. Does anyone else have anything to add? Come on up, sir. And if there's anyone on the line, I'll put you on notice that I'm going to jump over virtually next.
My name is Gerald Urban. I just live in the west end or the east end of that property. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of it, but that is a sloping land for quite some distance, and it gradually slopes down toward the east end of that property. And I think everybody should be quite aware there is going to be a lot of water there. At least now there's some soil, but now there's half of it is gone through driveways, houses. So I think great attention has to be considered the amount of water that flows down there. I live there. When it rains like this, my pump will go off every 5 minutes. Sometimes it doesn't go off at all. It just keeps running. There is so much water in that land. So that should be taken care of in whatever you're designing. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Final call, anyone in the room? Okay, is there anyone online virtually that wishes to speak to this report? I'm not seeing anyone other than staff unless I'm missing someone. So we have a staff recommendation before us. Final call from council members. Anything for staff, or go ahead, Councillor Van Passen.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It says in the report that there's going to be 2 places to access the Lynn Valley Trail, but this property doesn't touch the Lynn Valley Trail, so how do you get across? There's a couple of pieces of property in between this one and where the trail is, so has there been any work done that there's an easement going to be granted or something to that effect, or is that a typo?
To Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that is something we need to further work on. I think there is no connection at this time because of the grading, I believe. We need to work with the applicant to understand what would be the future intention to use that to connections. Primarily, it will be a connection to the natural heritage, but we need to work on that further.
Come on up and join the podium, sir. State your name for the public record, please.
Yeah, it's on, is it? My name's Rick Clark. I have a property, I think that's, in the area that you're speaking about, and that's one of the things I wanted to come to this meeting today to discuss because it's currently landlocked. So I'm looking to procure or have some kind of easement from the back end of that development onto my property to provide access. It's a wood lot right now. It's about 18 acres. It's part lot 8 is what it is. So perhaps that could ease. Well, my intent was to provide access to the Lynn Valley Trail in return for that access. So thank you.
Okay, maybe before you go today, you can leave your contact information with staff and we can facilitate a connection for you. Councillor Breton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've heard a lot here about stormwater and drainage, and I see in the, I guess it's a technical comments, a lot of reference to 2017 Gerard Engineering stormwater management pond master drainage plan. It would have been nice to see some of that. Has it been made available? I'd like to see some of that so we could, it may have answered some of the questions these gentlemen had. But I certainly have a little bit of a concern with how dense this whole thing is, and I know how water runs through subdivisions, so I'm concerned with some of the impact this whole thing's going to have. And I still don't know where this whole thing outlets. So anyways, just a comment.
Staff, do you want to provide any response to that, or is it something you want to follow up on?
So, Madam Mayor, I would probably defer this to our engineering colleague to provide some further insight on this.
Good afternoon, Council. Through the Mayor to the Council. So the current engineering of the pond for this subdivision, it is to outlet to the neighboring subdivision storm system, which then will dump into the existing pond that is in the adjacent subdivision, so the Phase 1 subdivision. We have asked that's one of the reasons why we have asked for the updated stormwater management pond to be, or stormwater management reports to be provided, as well as some of the original reports for the original phase to make sure that it will work all together in unison.
Okay. We have a staff recommendation before us to receive the report as information, and that the comments from today's meeting be considered in a future recommendation staff report at a later date. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by keep wanting to say board member. Councillor Vanadrishy, seconded by Councillor Barry.
Just a comment, there was no one on the outside line virtually coming in.
No, there's no one registered and no one other than staff.
Okay,
on the line.
perfect. Yes, I will. Thank you.
Okay. Any debate or discussion on that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks everyone for coming. So we will pick this up at a later council date. Staff will take your comments and council's comments, and it will come forward with a report and a recommendation for decision. Next on the agenda is item 4.2. It's the county initiated OPA and ZBA to conform to Bill 109, Bill 23, and Bill 97. It is CD 23077. Maybe just give everyone a moment to clear out, and then Mr. Sloan, whenever you're ready.
And thank you for that. I'll turn it over to Tricia and Nicole for when they are ready to provide the presentation and overview of this file once we're ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this presentation today has been a long time coming and is a comprehensive update of phase 1 of the updates that will be coming. We presented earlier this year outlining the items that we would be bringing forward. So this is the first phase. Also online with us today is our external legal counsel. Hassan is available also and has done a thorough review of the draft documents being presented today and can answer any additional questions that may come up through this. I will turn it over to Nicole, who's worked very hard on preparing this presentation and the draft bylaws, and then we'll be able to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tricia. Through you, Madam Mayor. So I wanted to start off by acknowledging just some emails which were sent yesterday from the development community while I was absent from work due to illness. So members of the development community identified some concerns with the notice and availability of the bylaws in advance of the public hearing. So I just wanted to confirm the details in relation to this file. The notice of public hearing was placed in the local newspapers on November 9th, 2023, as required by the Planning Act for countywide technical amendment. A draft version of the proposed bylaws were made available on November 15th in paper format at the RAB office. And they were utilized by members of the public, except in one instance where miscommunication occurred with a contract staff member during coverage at the front desk. Business and